Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Ramin Azarm, owner and operator of Flex to Success Clinical Rehabilitation Services and licensed clinical social worker. Today, I'd like to do a presentation on burnout. Burnout is, man, it's something that's really plaguing our society. So, just to give a short revision here, um, about 10 to 15 years ago, as a society in the United States of America, we were able to function on working one job. Now, there are some people out there that still work one job and they're able to support themselves because they've either decided to stay single and just have to support themselves, so therefore they only need to work one job and they live very meagerly. They save their money, they don't eat out, they cook their own meals, and they are very frugal and they're able to survive on one job. But that is not the norm in society today. Now, um, households need two and three jobs when they have to support families to be able to survive, especially in New York State, where taxes are very, very high. So I'm one of those people that works two jobs to support my family, and there's many, many other people like me that are doing the same thing. And because of that, we have had to take on double the stress, double the responsibility, and there's effects with this. Like there's things that we are going to experience physically, mentally, and emotionally as a result of having to work harder to maintain the same standard of living. So this can very quickly and very easily lead to burnout. And that's why I'm doing this presentation today, because I feel like it's extremely important for people to understand when you make too many sacrifices and you push yourself too hard, you can end up with consequences that are permanent and never go away for the rest of your life. And since I love educating the public on topics that are maybe not as commonly talked about in our society, I'm going to go ahead and continue with the 5 stages of burnout. So, stage one is the honeymoon phase. Anytime we're starting something new or jumping into like a new job or we make a new friend or we start a new activity, there's usually this idea of or this feeling of where we're oozing with positivity. All we see is the positives and we don't see any of the negatives. We just it's almost like selective denial. We just decide that we're only going to focus on what's great, what feels good, because starting something new oftentimes feels good. And we want to be able to enjoy that. It's almost like a natural high. So it's similar to like being in love, right? Where there's red flags, but like you just ignore them. You just, this is something new. I want to enjoy it. I don't want to be burdened with thinking pessimistically or negatively about it. I just want to be happy. I just want to revel in the enjoyment of this new thing that I started. Right? The honeymoon phase. It's when everything is just perfect even when it's not. Um, so yeah, it's this feeling of everything feels right and nothing feels wrong, yada yada yada, right? So the next phase is the stress onset phase. So this is stage two, and it usually begins with, okay, now we're starting to understand that things weren't as perfect as we might have led ourselves to believe, right? So we start to realize if it's a job, maybe some days are going to be harder than other days, right? After we got hit with a couple of the really bad days, we're like, oh, like, okay, like man, I feel knocked off that horse. Like I'm starting to realize what it's like to be rolling around the mud at this tough place, and hmm, it's maybe not exactly what I thought it was. And it's sometimes it's a shock to people. Like I know this happened with nurses. I used to work with a lot of nurses at Long Island Community Hospital, and I know they're like, yeah, when we were going to school for nursing, it was different than once we actually became nurses. Like what you were led to believe when you were in school is a lot different than what it's actually like to work in the field. What that pressure is actually like. And what it's like to be micromanaged by administration, and what it's like to have deadlines, and what it's like to make a mistake and then have to face your peers the next day. Um, so I spoke to a lot of nurses, and they kind of explained this to me in their own words, and it was multiple, people that I came into contact with, and it gave me a good understanding of what that stress onset phase really consists of, because a lot, not just the nurses, but anybody really hitting stage 2, they're going to start feeling distracted. Um, they start experiencing mood irritability, dissatisfaction with almost everything. Their children, their families, their job, their money, their everything. A lack of sleep or insomnia, sometimes even in extreme cases. Avoiding social interactions, just isolating yourself and not wanting to have to face people. Reduced productivity, not being able to accomplish as many tasks as you used to be able to in a day. Anxiety starts to kick up a little bit. Delayed or avoided decision making. Appetite changes. You might find yourself not really eating that much or overeating. Forgetfulness, um, where maybe you had a really strong memory in the past. Now you're starting to forget really simple, basic things. Chronic fatigue, just this sense of feeling zapped and exhausted and just like your soul has been crushed. Um, let's see. Neglecting self care, not showering, not brushing your teeth, not combing your hair, not dressing, not checking your clothes for stains in the morning or whatever your routine is. Headaches, chest pain, and even in some senses, excessive crying. So those are just a few of the symptoms that you might experience with stress onset phase 2 of burnout. And then the next stage is the chronic stress phase. So that's stage 3. In the chronic stress phase, now you might start to feel like you're in a state of crisis all the time. So, if you got pulled over by a cop, but the cop let you go, now you might be freaking out about that all day. Like, oh man, I got pulled over by a cop. Something bad could have happened. I could have, whatever, got in trouble for A, B, and C, and this was a really bad position that I was put in. And you just sit there overthinking it over and over and over and over again until you spin yourself out of control. What else happens in the chronic stress phase? So you start to just avoid hobbies altogether. Like all the things that you used to do for fun, you're like, I'm not doing it. That's it. I'm done. I quit. I quit all my hobbies. There's no point anymore. You start to get that feeling of like hopelessness. Like even if I do my hobbies, it's not going to make me feel better. I'm too stressed out. I'm taking on too much. It's too heavy. You start to miss deadlines. So maybe you're given assignments or you set deadlines for yourself, right? And then you just start missing them on a constant basis. Another constant, procrastination, just avoiding responsibility altogether for as long as you possibly can. Physical illness, when we're stressed out and run down, we get sick. That's just the reality of human immune systems. They do not function well when they're under stress all the time. It decreases their ability to be able to function at their optimal level. So denying problems, your car is breaking down, you need to take it into the shop, you just keep driving it. You don't want to face the fact that there's going to be another obstacle that you're going to have to deal with in order to function because you just feel so incredibly overwhelmed with everything else that's going on. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction can be common. A decreased sex drive is also a very common symptom when you're feeling chronic stress phase. Angry and aggressive behavior, lashing out, snapping at people, attacking people. Road rage is a big one. Um, I really believe road rage is a direct, I mean, yes, road rage is an inability to manage one's anger. Like, that's a given, that's a universal for everybody, but I also believe that our personal lives and what's going on in them has a direct effect on how we might react in a situation like a road rage situation. I believe it has a very strong impact. Apathy and having a cynical attitude all the time, always feeling like things are just going to be bad no matter what, that there's always something awful awaiting us in the future. So the next stage after the chronic stress phase is burnout. So this is when you actually start feeling the effects of burnout. So feeling empty inside, obsessing on a more constant basis, increased physical discomfort, bowel movement issues. You might be constipated. You might find yourself having diarrhea, things that we really don't like to talk about. A desire to drop out of society. That's it. I've had it. I no longer want to be part of this society anymore. I no longer want to be around people that have a difference of opinion with me. I don't want to have to I don't want to have to expend the time, energy, and attention to manage social relationships in any type of group format. What else? Moving away from everyone and resorting to isolation, social isolation. There becomes an increased desire and feeling to want to do that. And just an overall feeling of I don't have a place in the world. I don't have any more hope that things could get better. And I'm starting to really feel like giving up. Like giving up is really starting to sound great right now. That's pretty much all I'm thinking about. I'm just thinking about giving up every single day. It's just wearing on me. And then the last phase, and there actually is, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, right? The last phase is habitual burnout. So this is the end game of burnout. And once you reach habitual burnout, this is when like all those symptoms that we've talked about start to become permanent. Like we were talking about an increase, a progression of the symptoms with each phase. But once we hit habitual burnout, that's when everything starts to become permanent. It's like a permanent state of hopelessness where now you might have acquired like some type of illness that has caused permanent consequences in your life. And an example of this would be like a heart attack. Like you got so stressed out or you got so burnt out that you actually, like the symptoms led to you having a heart attack. The stress and the feeling of things aren't ever going to get better. And, it just riled you up so much that you ended up having a heart attack. And or a stroke. And now you have permanent consequences as a result of this medical issue that was triggered by burnout and stress. So this is how, this is why a lot of times they say stress kills. Because stress, once it gets to a certain point, if it's allowed to continue escalating without being diffused, can actually lead to a permanent medical consequence. And it's hard for people to put this together because they're like, oh, when I feel, I've been feeling stressed out for years and nothing's ever happened. Okay, but it just takes that one time. That one time where you're pushed over the edge and boom, you stroke out. And now you just lost all the feeling of your left side for the rest of your life. All because you didn't manage your burnout. Who knows? Maybe it would have happened anyway. We don't know. But according to the research, burnout intense form of burnout, habitual burnout can lead to these things. It's a contributing factor, so why not manage it, right? So maybe a permanent physical problem, a permanent emotional problem. Now you have some type of a mental illness, a chronic mental illness as a result. Could be major depressive disorder, could be post-traumatic stress disorder, could be bipolar disorder. And, bipolar disorder tends to be genetically passed on. And, Yeah, of course, there's a good chance that like maybe the burnout or the stress only triggered the bipolar disorder, it didn't actually cause it, which is more likely and more realistic. But nevertheless, if we manage our burnout, then something as severe like bipolar disorder won't get triggered. And we'll never experience the full range of symptoms of bipolar disorder if we're able to manage our burnout in some instances. So, those are the 5 stages of burnout: honeymoon phase, stress onset phase, chronic stress phase, and burnout and habitual burnout. Those are the 5 stages, and this is what people go through as a result of being in a situation where they are just escalating towards habitual burnout. And I hope you guys got something out of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, please subscribe. If you have any comments, please leave them below in the comment section. And I just want to thank everybody for their time today and for allowing me to do this presentation. Take care, guys. Have a good one.